Freedom is absolute news. Second weekend, June 2026. What are my latest reflections on current stuff? I don't hear or see a lot about the US-Israel-Iran war lately, except the cost of fossil fuels, energy and other essential goods are substantially higher or soon will be than before this war. I guess this was one of their main objectives of their war all along. Make the people even more poor, weak, dependent and controllable. Let's give them some taste of the opposite. Let's become more independent, strong, resilient and deflate their parasitic system. All this while they keep on lying about the economy until they can't, I suppose. Exciting and dangerous times. Let's not forget about the official mandatory military service in Germany. World War III is getting serious for Europe. Fake opposition of fake opposition has made on command of their elitarian masters military service compulsory in Germany. World War III might well be their ultimate move in their failing financial Ponzi system of deceit. Let's keep our children safe. About their Ponzi system. It appears asset prices are struggling relative to price inflation while they keep on lying about the corrupt, wasteful, counterproductive, impoverishing, destructive, bad and worsening state of the economic, governmental and financial system. Bond yields are struggling to stay low enough for the unsustainable and unproductive debt worldwide. Is the last biggest print ever on the horizon? Fasten your seatbelts. Let's neither forget their depopulation agenda. Oncologist Angus Dalgleish. There are at least 12 mechanisms where mRNA can insert into DNA and activate oncogenes. There is no way you can control this technology. Its use for future vaccines should be banned and the COVID ones stop now. Neither forget their always ongoing poisoning agenda through the food supply. Disclose TV, EU Parliament to vote on new legislation introducing a two-category system for GMO products under NGTs, new genomic techniques, with NGT, one final products no longer requiring mandatory GM labeling, as it can be perceived negatively and cause limited consumer acceptance.
Freedom is absolute news, final weekend of June 2026. Because I am personally involved in this matter and deeply outraged by it, this news bulletin will focus exclusively on this topic. De Leyen provides bus services in Flanders under the supervision of, and is largely funded through taxpayers' money by, the Flemish government. My 12-year-old son has a valid prepaid annual personal subscription, which he uses every day to travel to and from school and which, in principle, entitles him to travel on any De Leyen bus at any time during the subscription period. The legislators, managers, and operational staff involved have established a system under which fines are systematically imposed during targeted inspections, even when a passenger has a valid subscription, if that subscription was not successfully registered by a yellow scanner when boarding the bus. As a result, my 12-year-old son recently received a €24 and a €60 fine. I will present conclusive evidence that these government-imposed protocols and systematic fines constitute offenses against the people of Flanders. A bus has two yellow scanners for validating transport tickets issued by De Leyen itself, one next to the driver at the front and one at the center door. The bus also has white scanners for passengers paying with a bank card. A fare evader who has not paid and does not intend to pay can almost always board without scanning and without the driver asking for proof of payment. Such a passenger simply boards through the center door or even through the front door, walks past the driver who almost never asks for a ticket. I'll provide elaborate proof of this in following news bulletins. If the driver very exceptionally does ask, the fare evader simply replies, "I'll pay with my bank card in a moment," and for once rides legally or claims to have forgotten his card and gets off the bus. So what is the offense by the government? It is a serious violation of privacy through the systematic mandatory recording of citizens and their vulnerable children's boarding times, locations, and travel routes, while this practice has no effect whatsoever on fare evasion. The second offense: during a targeted inspection, the inspector scans the subscription that my son, as always, had with him during both inspections. The inspector's tablet can then establish that it is a transport pass that is valid, in principle, on every bus anytime and that was fully paid for well in advance. The mere fact that the authorities systematically issue fines despite confirming on the spot that the passenger possesses a valid transport pass is of course an offense against Flemish families and their children. Surely the government cannot seriously claim that my son, who presents a valid personal subscription to the inspector, is a fare evader, yet that is precisely what it does.
Freedom is Absolute News, third weekend, July 2026. Appeal against Delayen's criminal fines. Let me briefly recap the two wrongs committed by the government against the Flemish people that I discussed in the previous news update. Delayen forces Flemish citizens with a valid subscription to provide personal private data every time they board a bus by threatening them with fines. Neither the mandatory scanning of subscriptions upon boarding nor these fines have any effect on fare evaders. Delayen is stealing money from Flemish citizens through these fines. Below is the appeal I recently submitted to Delayen's Fines Department, Boats at Delayen, B. Yes, you read that correctly. You submit your appeal to the very department that issued the fine. They do not even make an effort to maintain the appearance of impartiality. I hereby appeal your fine. My 12-year-old son scanned his subscription card when boarding the bus, but it did not work at that moment. When the inspector checked it later, it worked correctly, and it has also worked on subsequent bus journeys. This means that some kind of technical glitch occurred with either the scanner or the card at the time of boarding. Requiring us to prove afterwards that such a glitch occurred, or that the device may even have been defective, is practically impossible and constitutes an infringement of our fundamental civil rights as holders of a valid subscription. Furthermore, the mere fact that an inspector issues a fine to a subscription holder after establishing, or being able to establish on the spot, that the person has a valid prepaid subscription constitutes a serious infringement of our fundamental civil rights as subscription holders. My son was not traveling without a valid fare. He demonstrated this by presenting his valid subscription, and the inspector confirmed through his tablet that the subscription was valid. A fine for fare evasion is therefore entirely unjustified. If you are issuing this fine because of your requirement that subscription holders scan their cards when boarding, a requirement that is completely ineffective in preventing fare evasion, this too constitutes a serious infringement of our fundamental civil rights as subscription holders. Requiring subscription holders to scan their cards when boarding has no effect whatsoever on fare evaders. Please provide your evidence that it does. I will have no difficulty demonstrating the flaws in your evidence. If instead this fine is intended to collect personally identifiable travel information, then it constitutes an even more serious infringement of our fundamental civil rights as subscription holders. By systematically requiring the scanning of personalized subscriptions, you are seriously violating the privacy of all subscription holders, particularly vulnerable children, elderly people, and other vulnerable individuals. To be continued, Paca Small.